Good evening and thank you for tuning in to Black News Tonight. I'm Marc Lamont Hill. We start tonight with the high-profile trial of actor Jussie Smollett, as the Empire star took the witness stand today to testify after being accused of orchestrating a hate crime in Chicago and lying to police about it. Smollett testified in his own defense that the anti-gay and racist attack that he reported happened to him back in 2019 was not a hoax, adding that the money he paid was to a friend for a diet and exercise plan for him, and not to arrange a phony hate crime. His testimony also largely focused on his relationship with the men at the center of the attack, the Osundairo brothers, as Smollett testified that he did drugs and made out with Abimbola, who last week denied he had any sexual relationship with Smollett. The actor faces 6 counts of disorderly conduct for lying to the police. In Minnesota, jury instructions have begun for the trial of a former police officer who fatally shot black motorist Daunte Wright during a traffic stop back in April. Jury instructions are significant to the trial as they teach jurors the law and how to assess facts through the scope of the law. Former police officer Kim Potter claims she mistakenly drew her gun instead of her taser. Potter now faces charges of both first and second-degree manslaughter. Opening statements are set to begin on Wednesday. Tensions grow in a Missouri community after a black man was killed by his neighbor. On November 3rd, 28-year-old Justin King was shot and killed by his white neighbor. Police say the shooter was only acting in self-defense as King was trying to break into the home. However, King's family, along with witnesses, say that is not what happened and that the two were actually friends. According to NBC News, 3 neighbors say the shooter was, quote, a man who had expressed a desire to kill someone, has a history of violence, and was known to use racial epithets. Police have yet to release surveillance video footage of the incident to the public. Joining me now to break down today's top stories is BNC Chief Legal Correspondent Laura McNeal. Good to see you as always. Let's start off with the Jussie Smollett case. What were the major takeaways from Jussie Smollett's testimony earlier today?
Yeah, Mark, today's court proceedings really reminded me of an episode of Empire, to be quite honest. It was a lot. Essentially, the big takeaways from this case is that you could tell that Jussie Smollett's testimony was to serve 2 purposes. One, to get his side of the story of what happened the night that he was allegedly attacked in this homophobic, racist attack. And 2, to also discredit Ola and Bola. Those are the 2 individuals that allegedly attacked him. Again, they're saying that he paid him to do it. He's saying, no, I didn't. And so essentially he tried to discredit both of their testimonies and their character. He painted Bola, one of the individuals, as a scorned lover, that he and Bola, based on Smollett's account, had a prior relationship together, a sexual relationship together. And he talked about other activities he had, social activities, smoking marijuana with the brothers. And so he really tried to discredit them while he was on the jury. Now, whether or not I think he actually did that is another story, but definitely not the testimony I expected from Smollett.
Definitely not the testimony that I expected today. When I read the transcript of what he said and did, I got to say I was thrown for a loop. Ultimately, will his testimony today help him or will it hurt him?
You know what, I think it's going to hurt him. And the reason why is it doesn't help that he's an actor, and he could have just put on literally the performance of his life, because he's got, you know, he's got a verdict on the stand. Now, granted, the likelihood of him serving jail, very small. Likely he would, if convicted, he'll do probation, community service, but he wants to save face in a sense. And so I just didn't find his testimony that compelling, and it just doesn't look good. It almost looks like he's intentionally trying to deface the character of those 2 young men that have now turned state witnesses. So again, I'm obviously not in the jury box, but I don't think it helped him.
I will say this: even if what the men who are accusing Jussie Smollett of lying are telling the truth, and they really were hired to stage a fake attack, and they bought bleach and ropes and stuff, I mean, their characters still should be under attack. I mean, it's a very interesting thing where even no matter who's telling the truth, somebody's lying, right? Even the people who are telling the truth are simply admitting to why they were lying and engaged in a conspiracy. So it's hard to say that we can trust anybody here. That's why it's important, I think, to watch the whole case and get the full details before we make any decisions. But this today, I'm not sure if it did him any favors either. We'll find out. But let's talk about Kim Potter. What should we expect about the opening statements in that case, and how will each side argue their cases?
Yes, so I'm going to be glued to this television screen tomorrow for those opening statements. What I'm anticipating from the prosecution, they're going to paint Kim Potter, Officer Potter, as, listen, she's a 20-year-old veteran. She knows what she was doing. She actually trained other individuals. And as a veteran and as an officer, she had a certain standard of care, and she breached that standard of care. She was reckless, negligent. This was no mistake. She was simply reckless doing her job, and her recklessness resulted in the death of Daunte Wright. Now, the defense in their opening statements, they're going to paint a very different Kim Potter. They're going to say that she has a reputation for being a peaceful, law-abiding officer, that, you know, she honestly just made, although deadly, a mistake, a reasonable mistake under the circumstances. And they're going to say, listen to her own words during the incident when she's yelling, taser, taser. Look at her after the incident when she's sobbing, sitting on the curb. So you're going to see two different narratives of what actually happened that day. It'll be interesting to see how the jury reacts to those opening statements.
Absolutely. Now, the case is taking place at the same courthouse where Derek Chauvin was found guilty. Do you see that having any potential impact on the Potter case?
You know what, I think it will. The George Floyd the case, meaning the conviction for Derek Chauvin for killing George Floyd, it really was a turning point. I was there covering the trial in Minnesota for Minneapolis, a turning point of saying no more, a turning point that led them to trying to vote to defund the police on their ballots this past November. And so really, I think it does matter that it's in the same court, because I think there's this pressure, inherent pressure on these jurors to not allow, again, lack of accountability for police officers, because, you know, it's going to send a message if you say that police officers are able to make a deadly mistake, especially when it's a 20-year-old veteran who's training other officers on how to use the equipment. That's not going to bode well with this community. We saw the reactions, again, of joy when Derek Chauvin was found guilty. I think you'll see some pretty strong reactions if they feel like Kim Potter simply gets a little pat on the hand.
So let's move on to our last story from Bourbon, Missouri, where, again, Justin King was shot by his white neighbor back on November 3rd. What is the latest with this case, and is there any new info actually being released?
Yes, now this case really bothers me, Mark, and the reason why is because, I mean, when you have not one, not two, but multiple neighbors having a very different account of what the police say happened that day, it's obviously going to make us all pause, which is why it's important to kind of keep the pressure on this case. There haven't been any new developments in this case, but what's important is the police officers have acknowledged, or the police department, they have video footage. There was security footage for both the shooter, the owner of the house, as well as the neighbor's house also had video footage. So what I say, when there's this much controversy where the eyewitnesses are saying something very different from the police report, release the footage. That there shouldn't be anything to hide if that police report is accurate. For example, they're saying that Justin was shot outside the home. The police report says he was shot inside the home, allegedly an intruder, when the neighbors are like, no, they knew each other. They were friendly. They were friends. And so I don't understand, why is there a holdup in releasing the video footage? What's the problem with transparency? And so I'm hoping that we and the community members there will continue to keep the pressure on this case, because something just doesn't smell right here.
There's another piece to this, which is Missouri's castle doctrine law. And of course, all around the country, we're seeing all sorts of gun laws, whether it's Florida, whether it's Texas. We're seeing laws that make an affirmative defense around self-defense easier, and in the minds of some critics, too easy. What does Missouri's castle doctrine law, or how does it rather, play into this?
Yeah, so essentially the shooter in this particular incident in Missouri, he's claiming that Justin was an intruder in his home, and based on Missouri's castle doctrine, that says, you know, if you have an intruder in your home, you have the right to shoot him. You don't have to retreat, and you can say self-defense. Essentially, my castle is my home, or my home is my castle, rather. And so it's essentially if you have an intruder, you can use deadly force. There are no consequences. And the reason that's problematic is in a situation like this, where the homeowner is saying, I had an intruder, the eyewitnesses are saying, he was shot outside your home, not inside your home. So the castle doctrine shouldn't apply in this situation. Now, this case, obviously the facts are still unfolding. We haven't seen video footage, but it shows some of the problems with having these types of law on the books, especially when you have black victims.
Absolutely. Dr. Laura McNeal, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Black News Tonight. Please come back soon and keep us updated on these stories. Everybody, be sure to join the conversation. We want to hear from you. Head over to our BNC Instagram and Twitter pages. Let us know how you feel. Also, visit our website, bnc.tv, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out clips from the show.